Hi everyone, welcome to the class. So this should be a really fun and interesting piece of what you're going to do kind of Socrates style or the Socratic method of learning from each other and gaining from knowledge I have from research and different books we'll read and texts we'll look at and ideas. So today's lecture and this week I just wanted to have some fun and talk about the root of information technology and communication and why it's really there. It's a method to enhance all of us to be able to communicate together. Back in the early 2000s, two scholars came up with an idea when IT really started to boom. It was Tapscott in 1998 with the idea of millennials, people born into that Y2K era, some of you still, and Prensky, Mark Prensky in 2001, he came up with this idea and concept of labeling two groups, the digital natives and the digital immigrants with information technology. And he came up with the idea that digital natives are born into technology. They come out with a world with no telephone cords, where there's already frequencies and adaptions with code that allow us to work in a world where transmission doesn't have a wire connecting to us. Our computers are wireless through Wi-Fi. We have a free information society today to where we can Google and literally get information at our fingertips at the speed of light or our transmission download rate and move through different worlds in essence. The idea of Stephen Hawking's theories on string theory or Michio Kaku's idea where there's multiple dimensions might not be that far away, or today they're trying to map the mind and use computers to put every neuron together with England and one program to understand everything we do and all synapses firing. This all roots back for information transmission if we think about it to an original two scholars in 1948. And these two scholars looked at a model and they called it the Shannon and Weaver model, named after them, that came from a few years after the bombing in 1941 in Pearl Harbor, December 7th. A lot of you know this from your history books. And they came up with the idea of what was the problem, what went wrong. And they discovered that, well, first, in every transmission loop is what they call these, you have to have a sender who encodes the message and a receiver who decodes the message through a loop or a wire or a transmission or wireless as we see it today. There's no real difference between now and then from 911 mobile technologies, if you think about it. The platforms that we're running right now, talking to each other. You're downloading this information I'm providing. I'm encoding it on my computer. I'm uploading it to YouTube channel, providing the code in the back end to our D2L, and you download it and get it. The problem happens when inside that loop, when we look at this figure, the channel, as they call it, the message is not received. There's noise, there's feedback, there's some difficulty. Verizon made an incredible ad out of this over the years of "Can you hear me now?" Every time their cell phone would break, everyone would joke, "Can you hear me now?" And they said their competitors have lacks or holes or areas of dead areas where their transmissions can't get through and be decoded by your cell phone. Still the same type of media and idea. Just to jump back for 1 second, what happened in 1941 was an interesting concept because ham radio operators, who essentially then had no wires as well, if we think about it, transmitted to the Army a message saying they saw planes flying over Pearl Harbor with odd-shaped missiles on the bottom that were Japanese. The problem in this transmission loop, if we go back, the information went through and was decoded by the recipient, but the recipient was actually a noise filter because it didn't go to the Navy, who actually needed the information. So it worked, but it didn't work because of information hoarding, which we'll talk about later as a big thing in the global market space and economics today, because information and data is power, even back then. So when we look at stuff, we look at the value of information flow on a global scale. Today we use the Internet Protocol, the IP address, which allows for your identity to be protected, but also be false. So there's two dynamic sides to that coin. We never really know who's on the other side of that node. where that's processed to. Stuart Brand back in '84 was thinking of this idea of a whole earth catalog, which is a pretty neat concept, which comes again, and I'll forward into Google's idea of free information, wanting to catalog all the books. But if you think back to your law and ethics courses, what's the number one rule? Well, copyright. You can't just take other people's intellectual property and post it somewhere else, free or not, without having accreditation or permission. That ends up breaks down laws, copyright laws, trademark infiltration, and all kinds of different things is being fought right now, and where Google has backed down. Brand's idea originally kind of conceptualized that idea of cataloging everything and everyone. We'll talk later about a little more ideas on how global communication and global IT initiatives are communicating to the world, everything from healthcare to business, and changing the world in the way we see it. But for right now, let's just surface touch about how some quick changes we've realized over the last decade or so. Look at all the YouTube prophets, which I like to call them, or the whistleblowers that's come up today because of this anonymous ability to transmit information fast and effectively. Anybody becomes essentially a police officer for the world, which makes us safer. On the converse, it also makes us dangerous because anybody else can be a thief that can't be caught, which a lot of the hackers today are chased, and they get bad names because there's also ethical hackers that are looking to protect you and I. Let's look at a transmission historically. I love going back and forth again. The Vietnam War was an interesting case because it had General Westmoreland, who was in charge of Vietnam, attempting to stop transmissions from then journalists, especially Associated Press photojournalists who had filmed transmissions and their wire reports for the reporters, because they were trying to stop a smear campaign and allowing the American public to actually understand the true body count of how many soldiers were being killed in action. General Westmoreland would grossly miscount on purpose the amount of Viet Cong versus American soldiers injured into a war we've never experienced before. War was once friendly and civilized across lines, and you shoot or whatever means, throw rocks at each other. But this was the first war where it was uncivilized. It was guerrilla, in essence, is what they called it, to where you would pop up anywhere and shoot at your enemy, and sometimes you didn't even know who your enemy was. But broadcasters brought out this information in a transmission loop, essentially using the technology of the day to get out the first video and wire transmissions about the lies to this American public, which caused an outrage. And they did it at the 5 o'clock news when everybody ate dinner and it was family time. And it caused horrific response because of the public's first time seeing this actuality of U.S. troops being injured and killed. So the technology was actually locked down. This is a case to where there was a good and bad, to where American public learned about the abuses of the military and the lies, but on the other end, it caused a backlash in America to go against our U.S. troops because they lashed out against them of anyone in a uniform. So technology has a good and a dark side. It has a global way of opening up doors and sharing information and or exposing. Speaking of exposing, let's forward a little bit to today. Everybody's heard of WikiLeaks, right? Well, Julian Assange, the creator of this, is currently a very interesting human, and he's hiding from prosecution in an embassy, but he still is working on his free information movement, on especially getting war on secrets. If you look back in Watergate, how hard it was for the journalists then and people to actually transmit that information and truth, but in seconds, Chelsea Manning was able, as an intelligence officer, to leak the classified information to Julian Assange on WikiLeaks. This sprang into the idea, which you'll read about, and I'm not going to give it all away to you, where a whole series of political leaders were ousted from office because of the callous treatment they did to their people in their countries, which was called the Arab Spring, and this was a catalyst from that. They called it the Iraq War Logs, is what Chelsea Manning was leaking. There was video, everything from video strikes in Baghdad showing what was happening there to cause, again, public scorn and government sanctions. And eventually, Chelsea Manning would be prosecuted and jailed for this leaking of information. But Julian Assange today still uses that media to operate his business and work and show up virtually. He was recently in the United States when he appeared in a three-dimensional hologram in a conference for world leaders to discuss information free flow. Rather interesting. When I was a child, Star Wars first projected a hologram idea from R2-D2. Fast forward 25 years, there's people actually doing this and having virtual meetings in 3D. The whistleblower idea alone is one of the biggest changes. But we see this all with IT and advantages from big to small. And I want you to think big to small, or small to big. Look at how dynamic the information flow was in the president's office. President Obama was the first person to ever have his own BlackBerry. This caused great havoc when he came into the office for his first tenure, because they were so scared of information encryption. They didn't know if it would be strong enough to protect the words the president was saying. Could you imagine if somebody said, hey, President Obama, here's the new code for the nuclear pass, or here's your new passcode on your account. And this was intercepted. This was a big deal, and it still is today. Versus, what one person can do. Barghashi was a person who did a very interesting thing in Saudi Arabia. He tweeted a blasphemous outrage, is what people called the tweet, and the transmission took maybe 6 seconds to connect to millions of followers. He was a newspaper person, and he would tweet these funny things, and when he tweeted this idea that he was having a conversation with the Prophet Muhammad, people were outraged. They actually called for his execution. He escaped to Malaysia but was brought back and charged. And it caused great outrage in the country. So there's different ways this media can actually flow. When we say IT, it's not just hardware of a computer and software. It's not just the code. It's everything around us. Information technology is an advancement of everything we do, from wireless printing on our computers to Bluetoothing in while we ride our bicycles and listen to music. One of the things that was interesting, I thought, and I bring up, is the point of Video Privacy Protection Act, 1998. And it became criminal to actually utilize data and give it away. Sorry, gang. I somehow lost it. There it goes. And disclose data of somebody's personal information. There was actually a person who gave away digital data information back in the early 80s on video renting of a female, and the person was able to stalk her and eventually killed the woman because of learning all the information flow that she had about where she lived, what she did, all from a video rental information, which caused a whole series of laws, and it's something we should think about today too, and how they are changing constantly. What is the IT future? We're talking a lot about virtual transmission. The Julian Assange case is not over. Criminal records today are all digital, and so are your medical records. What does this mean for you? Think about it. What if I, as an advertiser, was able to grab your records and find out what you love? Track one day how many different ads you get as you walk through the mall or the store, or you go to a gas station, and see how many super cookies grab your mobile phone and push ads through to you because it's open port. You might be shocked. Dr. King, a good friend of mine, did a dissertation on this and followed two females and were shocked at how much information grabbing and pushing was done on their mobile phones. But think about the ramifications of your medical records alone. I know most of you are young today, but what happens if you have diabetes or a heart attack and you're trying to go get insurance, and a data broker is able to capture that information and sell it? Think about how they could utilize that information and charge you extreme measures. Think about how you could be denied with any form of criminal record from your juvenile years that were closed on employment, a job application anywhere, a loan for your first home, maybe your new Ford Mustang. This is all information transmission values that have global consequences. If a business has the ability to use everything and work off their phones because of mobile technology, someone out there has the ability to break the encryption and steal every single piece no matter where they are in the world. This is why Apple was so worried. It was not about giving the government private information of a person that no longer is here in a case that happened in early 2015, which was a tragedy. It was about protecting all the information flow of all the organizations and people that demand the encryption, and that's why they buy their product. It was about intellectual property, copyright. You know, we've had P2P sharing for years. We've seen it with cases that would happen with Napster and with Metallica that finally stopped that free flow of information where they lost millions of dollars in sales on albums. I've seen it with my dog, who has an RFID chip inside where if he ever gets lost and one of the vets around has a scanner, they can find the dog. If they find a dog, they can scan and find my phone number, email, and get in contact with me. Currently in India, they have a UID program where they're creating unique IDs for every single individual and hoping to catalog every single person, every single citizen. That's 1.2 billion, by the way. People they're thinking to catalog and have essentially a unique identifier for each citizen. Maybe you'll get that instead of a birth certificate. You'll get it injected with a chip. That might be coming soon. Your child might actually, instead of having fingerprints, have RFID chips or the new form. Today's inventions with IT technology and chips alone are so small they can implant them almost anywhere. This has amazing different aspects because if this happens to you, how can advertisers utilize this? If they get the data, get your IP address and your chip, can they send things right to you? If you're wearing Google glasses, can they constantly flow ads to you? Or what if you're being tracked by someone, a stalker, that could have a negative effect, or the police want to capture you? In seconds, you might be captured. Today, they do that through mobile technology and bouncing off of internet sites and or tracking mobile devices. Who knows what the world will come? So this is some of the global things I'm thinking about. How can we stop criminals and cartels? If they get arrested, why not implant a chip that we can capture them again instead of spending thousands and thousands of man hours and dollars trying to capture cartel criminals running drugs? Or if you're a drug dealer, you instantly get cataloged with one of these methods so we can track and make sure you don't go back if you're released from jail. Many implications of this on a global scale have business and continuity and all kinds of different great things that will be happening in our future. So this is an introductory lecture, kind of fun. So I want you to answer the first week's question and think a little bit about how this IT world has changed you and what you were born into, and if you have a child or down the road 10 years from now, how it's going to change. What does it mean? We already have digital books and transmissions. What will our new world be? Will we just get fed through Michio Kaku's idea, a transmission into one of our nodes in our brain, and be able to have this class? I hope not, because I enjoy talking to you. Have a great day, everyone. I'll talk to you soon.